How's it going, everybody? Welcome in to another episode of the Mavs Step Back Podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Trigg. I'm joined by our Mavs Step Back podcast correspondent, Grant Afseth. He does a lot of great work for us over DallasBasketball.com. He's got his own podcast that he does with Kevin Gray that, they feature it on the Mavs official radio channel, The Eagle. We got a lot of stuff to talk about in a short period of time today. We're going to have more to talk about after this upcoming stretch of games. But the Mavs, they've lost 6 of their last 9. They started this home stretch with a win over the Rockets, who at the time were tied with the Timberwolves for the top defense in the league. That was encouraging. And then, Luka, he had his baby. Congrats to him. He missed that game against the Memphis Grizzlies, but Kyrie was still playing, and you figured, as bad as the Grizzlies have been, that the Mavs would find a way to win that one, and they didn't. It was bad. So they got beat badly by the Grizzlies. They came back that next night, and when they got beat by the Grizzlies, and then you had to play the team with the best point differential in the Western Conference on the second night of a back-to-back, it's like, okay, well, we kind of figure how this one's going to go, and it did for 3 quarters. And then down 24 in the fourth quarter, they pull a 30-0 NBA record run out of their asses and take a 117 to 111 lead with about 4 minutes left, and then they just ran out of gas. They couldn't finish the job. And it was weird because, they lost the game, but, everybody in the post-game stuff, the press conferences, you would have thought that they won the game the way everybody was talking. So that's how impressive that run was. And honestly, it was encouraging. That doesn't happen every day in the NBA. So they've shown that they can go on a run, especially when they were shorthanded. They didn't have Tim Hardaway Jr., didn't have Kyrie, Josh Green, Dante Exum, and they still were able to put together that kind of stretch. So here we are, 6 losses in the last 9 games. They will have had 3 days off when they take the court on Wednesday against the Utah Jazz. And then the next 2 after that are winnable too, because they play the Portland Trailblazers Friday. And then the next game will be against the Memphis Grizzlies. And then after that, the Lakers, they're not a pushover, but, it's a team that's very beatable for the Mavs. So you have an easier stretch of games coming up here. Do you think the Mavs are going to be able to turn this thing around, Grant? Because the Mavs themselves are pretty confident. Luka thinks they're about to turn things around. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think a lot of it depends on the availability with, both the superstar backcourt, being available to play. I think with Kyrie, participating in practice, that makes a big difference because honestly, the shooting from a lot of the role players has fell off, as a collective since that really hot start. So I feel like, you're going to have the superstars kind of level it up a little bit until that kind of recovers. And then, with the injuries to other players as well, we're not sure how long, Josh Green could be out. Grant Williams is now dealing with some knee soreness as well. So then it kind of gets into a thing where the top players kind of have to set the tone as well because of those elements in addition. So I think just, they could really turn things around with both of those guys likely being back in the lineup and just, kind of setting that tone. And then, their weak opponents as well, Portland and then Memphis again. That definitely should be wins, I would think. If you have Luka, that makes it very challenging for, an opposing team to account for. Adding Kyrie to help provide that support. And, yeah, I think there should be enough firepower throughout 48 minutes. And then defensively, you would think with Lively being back in the rhythm of playing after missing that one game due to that back contusion. I remember in the locker room, he did mention that, he didn't fully feel like he was himself physically after that first game back in the lineup. So, that's natural. So I feel like having a couple games now where he's played, he can help elevate the defense as well, like he did, throughout that game against the Thunder where he was making big plays. So I think those are all the factors, kind of the things that you would cling to as an identity can be relied on again with them all being in the lineup, going into these next few games.
It's a great transition because that was my next thing I was going to bring up is Dereck Lively specifically in that last game. They weren't able to pull off or finish off the comeback win against the Thunder, but, there were several positives to take away from that game. You had Luka with the the triple-double that tied Larry Bird on the all-time list. First game back from, being up late with his newborn baby, and he puts up 36 points, 15 rebounds, 18 assists. He had 2 blocks and 2 steals, too. Shot 50% from just a masterclass performance by Luka in that first game back. And then you had Lively, who is a few games removed from that back contusion, and back stuff is nothing to scoff at. I mean, it's hard to come back from something like that and be yourself. And, he had 20 points, 16 rebounds, and 7 blocks. And, he shot 9 of 9 from the field. And look, I know in today's age, you can cherry pick different NBA records, based on specific stats. We see it all the time. First player to do this, first player. But he was the first teenager in NBA history to put up that stat line, while shooting 100% from the field. So, it's something he can at least put on his resume. But, I mean, his development has been so rapid. It's exceeded, and we've talked about this many times before, and we keep talking about it with every, jaw-dropping game he has. But he just keeps raising the bar, and he's developed so much in just a 19-game span that it makes you wonder what he's going to look like toward the end of this season. I mean, if he keeps up at this pace, he's going to be one of the better centers in the league. Now, obviously, he's not going to be up there with Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic and those guys. But, I mean, he's going to be one of the best centers in the league if he keeps up at this pace. And, I think the more he builds chemistry with Luka and with Kyrie and the rest of the guys, and if he can stay healthy, then, you kind of want to believe Luka when he says this team's going to win a lot of games the rest of the season. So I'm impressed with him. He's exceeded all, and I had lofty expectations for him from the jump because I believed in his potential, and he has the physical attributes to where it's like, okay, the Mavs haven't had this in years, so obviously if he has the opportunity, he's going to make a difference. But he's even exceeded my expectations, and I mean, where do you see Lively as far as like the rookie ladder this year? Rookie of the year rankings. I think it's safe to say he's definitely going to be first team all rookie if he keeps this up, right?
Yeah, I would definitely think so, because I think with the structure, Wembanyama and Holmgren, because he'll be eligible, I believe, would they would be considered? Actually, I don't know. It's going to be interesting because is Holmgren going to be considered a center, or is he going to be considered a forward? Because I think he's playing a lot of 5, so it might be it might get complicated if they're both forwards. The Wembanyama and Holmgren, I think it's easy for sure. But I think, either way, he will be one of those like top rookie players where it's like kind of like with all NBA with the centers, where it's like 2 players that are like Embiid and Jokic, where one of them second team or something like that, and you're like, wow, he really shouldn't be second team, but he is, like that sort of situation. But regardless, he's definitely in that like top 5 rookie impact sort of when you look at the draft class right now, because there's no doubt about that. He's been able to provide like the major defensive anchor presence that the team lacked last year. Like there were times where opposing players I would just talk to sometimes after games, and they say like I just ask about the defense, things like that. Especially after the trade, I was curious, and they felt there was no interior defensive presence that would say. So now they have one. That's a big difference. And then just as he's continued to get comfortable offensively, I think the big element last game that we saw was the short roll attacking that he had. Like there was a lot of comments from, Luka told him in the second quarter that he needs to basically dunk the what ball.
Yeah.
If you're gonna go against the small or Holmgren, you need to go against the small defenders. Like don't have that extra juice for Holmgren. You better attack the smaller defenders too.
I think Jason Kidd, if I remember correctly, I think Lively said that Jason Kidd told him, quote unquote, don't pass the effing ball.
Yeah, it seemed like Luka and Jason Kidd were very motivated to get him to be very aggressive, which is crazy because it's like, if you think about the results, like he just got told mid-game to attack out of short rolls, and he did it, and he put Holmgren on a poster. Like a lot of players are getting like swatted away into like the 10th row by Holmgren. Yeah, it's very impressive, and honestly, that's one thing that we talked about a lot last year is out of those short rolls, the team was very limited. You had centers that were not really looking to even not looking at the rim at all. Like after they got the ball, they're just looking to get into a shooter who couldn't put it on the floor. So, having that threat from Lively is a very great dimension to have and continue to build on. And that's actually something, that I'm writing about, on DallasBasketball.com right now, is the fact that, he mentioned he wanted to continue to become more offensive minded, grow his impact on that side of the floor, and doing so by continuing to work on his ball handling and be aggressive. And, we're seeing that. And the fact that he got told mid-game and then applied it, that's a true testament to not only his talent, but coachability and humility as well.
Well, I know the position stuff makes it tricky with the all rookie teams and everything. They should probably, it's kind of like all NBA. They should probably just go positionless at this point, because it really should be the top 5 talents, in my opinion, regardless of position. But if you take into consider not just how he's played overall, but just specifically versus Wembanyama, versus Chet Holmgren, he's in my opinion, he's come out on top in those individual matchups both times, even though he's only 1-1 against them both now. But just individually versus those two, he's held his own and arguably played better than both of them in those matchups. So I think that's something that he can kind of hang his hat on, and it can be it can be part of his campaign at the end of the year, at least.
And I think for his development in general, it's very impressive to see that he played, Holmgren in his first summer league game, apply what he saw in that matchup, and then was prepared in the first regular season game that they played. And that's part of what a lot of the players in general have mentioned about his development, is the challenge of not seeing players multiple times. Like, he's seeing them for the first time. He has to get used to facing this guy's capable of this. I'm expecting this to happen when he does this. All those little nuances. Yeah. I talked to Dwight Powell, Grant Williams, and they all mentioned that very early in the season, that first road game that they played in Memphis. That was very early in the season. And they mentioned that, for him to stay in that defensive stance and really make a quick read and maximize his impact, it's going to require continuing to get comfortable with those matchups. And that's just a great example with a dynamic player like Holmgren. Applying what he's learned just makes a massive difference, and we saw that in that game, and that's encouraging for sure.
Well, like I said, it's win-loss wise, it hasn't been great. The Mavs are kind of on a skid, but the schedule lightens up. They have plenty of days of rest. They should, because they should be healthy going into this Utah game, because Kyrie and Tim Hardaway Jr. were back at practice here recently, and we don't know what's going to happen with Josh Green. But, they should have enough firepower to where they should rattle off, in my opinion, 3 straight wins here. Now, it's the NBA. Anything can happen on any given night, but I just feel like, the Mavs have a good chance to rattle off 3 in a row. Then you play the Lakers at home, and if you win that one, then all of a sudden, you're 15-8. And I've talked about a few times how the Mavs have been a 500 team after 30 games for Jason Kidd's first 2 seasons. Well, if you get to 15-8, unless you lose 7 in a row from that point, they're going to finally get over that hump. And every early season win matters. So we'll see how it goes. Should be an interesting week for the Mavs. The in-season tournament is going on now. 2 spots already secured in the Final Four in Vegas with the Indiana Pacers and the New Orleans Pelicans. And then we'll see how the other half of that bracket fills out tonight. But, guys, appreciate y'all joining us for a brief episode of Mavs Step Back Podcast. Be sure to go like, rate, and subscribe on all your favorite podcast platforms. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube, everywhere else you get them. Go to Grant's channel, at Grant Afseth on YouTube. Give him a subscription over there as well. And be sure to follow all of our work on DallasBasketball.com. We are churning out stuff every single day and night. So go over there and check out all that. There's a lot of good stuff coming before this Utah game on Wednesday. Guys, appreciate it. Y'all have a great rest of your day. We'll see you next time.